Hey, welcome everyone. Hey, this is session 3 of our Copilot summer series, Everyday Workflows in Copilot. Uh, um, as I said, today is where we make a real shift. In these first 2 sessions, we focused on understanding what Copilot is, what it's connected to, and how to think about using it responsibly. Today is going to be a little different. Today is about what this actually looks like in normal work. So for those of you who don't know me, or if you haven't been on the previous sessions, I am Stephen Lauber. I'm the CEO of Trailhead. And what we're doing in this series, it's pretty simple. We're trying to cut through the noise around Copilot and show what actually matters. Not the hype, not the marketing language, what it is and what it's connected to, and where it becomes useful in real work. So this session sits right in the middle of the series. Session 1 was about understanding Copilot. Session 2 was about using Copilot responsibly. Today, session 3 is about everyday workflows. Then after this, we move into what's next. New capabilities, some deeper functionality, and then how this expands over time. So if the first 2 sessions were about understanding the environment, today is about seeing where Copilot actually starts to help. So far, there are really 3 big ideas I want you to keep in your head. First, Copilot works inside Microsoft 365. It's not floating around off to the side. It's grounding in your environment. And then second, most of the risk that we've talked about isn't created by Copilot. Copilot tends to reveal what already exists, access problems and oversharing or bad habits and weak structure. And third, guardrails matter because they create trust. They make it possible to use this confidently instead of cautiously avoiding it. So if you miss sessions 1 or 2, or if you want to go back through them, everything's available. The recordings are available, the slides and the recap notes are included, and the resource page puts it all together in one place. So if you're joining here for the first time, you can still catch up easily. So today is intentionally lighter on slides. No deep theory. We're not going to do a giant feature tour. We won't have any long explanations. What we're going to do instead is walk through a few very normal moments in work, like getting oriented and responding, making sense of meetings, working across files, because that's where this starts to become useful. And this is the frame I want you to use for the rest of the session. This is not about prompts. It's not about collecting clever phrases to type into a box. And it's not really about asking, what can Copilot do? The better question is, where does it remove friction in work? That's where the real value is, not in the novelty, but in friction reduction. So let's walk through a normal day. You've been away, you come back, there are messages and meetings, files, scattered updates, and not everything matters equally. It's a very normal kind of chaos. And the first thing most people need, it's not brilliance, it's orientation. So what we're going to look at now is how Copilot can help in a few of those normal moments, figuring out what matters, knowing what to say, making sense of meetings, and connecting the dots across project files. So let's jump into the demo. Give me a moment while I kind of adjust the screen sharing here so that you guys can see the demo and actually hear a bit. So just give me a moment here, hang tight. I'm going to reshare a couple things here real quick. Okay, set that screen. All right, so that'll be my demo screen. I'll go full screen here so you guys can see it all. All right. So I'm not going to try to show everything that Copilot can do. I'm trying to show where it becomes useful. In the first 2 sessions, we focused on what Copilot is and what it reveals. Today I want to shift to something simpler. What this actually feels like in real work. Not prompts for prompt's sake, not tricks, just a few normal moments, right? Like coming back to too much email, needing to respond quickly, trying to get something useful out of a meeting and making sense of project files. So let's start with something pretty normal. This is going to be our demonstration user we've been using throughout the series, Mark here. So none of the information here is actual. This is all kind of made up or demonstration purposes. But Mark's been away for a couple days. He's got some unread emails. We open up Outlook here. You'll see he's actually got a fair amount of messages he needs to kind of sort through and figure out what needs to be responded to, what some of the priorities are there. He's got some Teams chats. So let's go look at Teams. You can see some chats here. There are some unresponded to, some new chats that are in his Teams area. He's also got some meetings scheduled. Sorry, I'm battling with my sharing screen controls. Let me move that a moment. Okay, so he's got a calendar entry for he's got a meeting that was set up he might need to be preparing for. He's also had some new files added into OneDrive here that we need to take a look at. Not an unusual situation, but the question really isn't just, what's in my inbox. The real question is, what did I miss across my work and where should I start? So to do this, first, I'm going to kind of show how Copilot can really help out with this. So I'm opening up Copilot chat here, and I'm going to put a prompt in here. All right, so I'm going to ask Copilot here, hey, help me get started on my day. Summarize what I missed over the last few days across the Hard Review. Hard Review is the project we've been kind of working through in this Copilot summer series. But summarize things I missed in that Hard Review emails, some of the Teams chats, meetings and files, even separate urgent items, decisions made, and open questions, and what needs my attention first. So we'll go ahead and give that to Copilot. And that might take a moment or two to run, because this is a fairly broad request prompt that I've given it to. I've given Copilot. I've asked it to search across emails, Teams chats, through meetings, even files. So depending on the volume of content there, that could take a little while. So we're going to let that run. And we'll kind of focus on what it brings back here. And you'll kind of notice first thing, I've got some of my urgent items, really suggesting, hey, I found several updates across 33 emails, some meetings, conversations, 12 files over the last few days. But here's kind of where it's suggesting, this is the urgent stuff. Why don't you start here? So it's, identifying a few things that need to be maybe looked at first. Like the Hard Review project needs a planning grade date. A couple of ownership gaps have been revealed. That this permit review issue is still active. Then it went into some decisions that were made while Mark was gone here. Looks like some dates have been set up. Also notes that leadership owns the final date decision on those. It has some questions, right? Here's some open questions that are lingering that you need to be looking through. And then into some of the chats. Here's some of the conversations, specifically some of my coworkers, Beth here, what she's been saying, had some messages about realistic is more valuable and optimistic, and some of her chats, summarizing those, some of the key themes from IDA conversations here with Mark. And then some important files updated, highlighting those. And then here's maybe even the most important part of this prompt and the response I got back from Copilot. I asked it, what needs your attention first? So it's prioritized some things, identifying this and confirming this permit ownership. Some good rich stuff here, kind of helping me kind of decide where to go first, right? And that's often, maybe one of the first things when you're coming back from being away from a bit. And I know a number of us can relate to that right now in the middle of summer here in West Michigan. A lot of us are taking some time off, and it can be a little bit of chaos when you return. So Copilot does a pretty good job here of helping me do some organizing, more than just summarizing emails, for example, right? This is maybe a follow-up prompt I'm going to give you, because I know I'm going to maybe start focusing on some emails here first as Mark starts his day. So let's ask a Copilot, I summarize my recent emails related to Harbor Review. Let that think about that for a minute. All right. Okay, so Copilot says it found several recent Harbor Review related emails. Gives me the dominant themes were schedule uncertainty, some operational planning risks, some ownership gaps, so kind of summarizing the themes. Gives me a nice executive summary here about those emails. And then what I really like here is it's identifying maybe the most important threads, right? Some operational concerns that Beth raised. Here's some leadership feedback. I pushed the team to move beyond status discussions and develop recommendations. Some current takeaways based on this email traffic. Really kind of helping me summarize, what are some of the dominant themes? What are the things that I need to be focusing on first? And I'm going to go maybe a step further here with Copilot and say, hey, what email should I respond to first? Okay, so it's suggesting here that maybe I take a look at this email from Beth, respond to that. Looks like she needs a quick check on the training schedule. So let's go find that email. So I'm going to go into Mark's Outlook. And quick check. Here it is. All right, so this is this email. I'm going to go ahead and open this up. We'll go into full view here. So here's the email that seemed maybe the most urgent. And often I don't know if I'm like the rest of you, if you share this trait, I often maybe struggle with starting an email or a document. Right, I think I kind of know what I want to say or what the responses need to be, but I struggle getting going. And this is a spot or a way that Copilot can really help. Kind of getting that first thought, right? You kind of start with that blank slate can be kind of tough. So I'm going to work with Copilot here inside this message. Let me grab a prompt that I've got, so I can pull up Copilot right here inside the message, and I'll give it this prompt. I'll say, hey, draft a response acknowledging the request, summarizing the current Harbor Review status, and setting expectations clearly. So we'll let Copilot work on that in a minute. What I want you to notice here too is what Copilot's going to be doing. Right? It's actually using this Outlook Draft Assistant, and it's creating the content right here inside of the message. I don't have to copy paste. I can actually work on this, and it's giving me kind of a first draft, right? And this isn't going to be perfect, and not meant to be something I'm just going to send, but it's maybe giving me a head start, giving me some things to kind of get going in a rough draft, and then I can edit this. I could go in here and maybe say, hey, I'm just getting back from vacation. Oop. Or whatever you would want to say here. But I can also work with Copilot here. I can say, I'm reading through this. It doesn't quite sound like Mark's typical tone. He tends to kind of be a little more concise. And I'd also maybe like this to be a little more executive friendly. So right here in Copilot, over on the right pane, I can interact with Copilot and kind of keep editing this content that it's already worked on. I can say, let's make this response more concise and executive friendly. Okay, and so Copilot's already done that. It's given me it gives me the option if I want to replace that right now. I could discard it if I didn't like that, but I'll say replace. And now I can continue to edit this. This is all live right inside Outlook, but you can notice that it's doing a lot of the work for me as far as the content creation. I'm not having to copy and paste maybe back and forth between another AI tool or even a Copilot chat. This is one of the really nice benefits of using Copilot in the licensed version of this inside of your work apps. And also, I guess maybe before I finalize this message, you can also continue to kind of just work. I'm going to kind of work back and forth, have a conversation with Copilot about this document. So I continue to ask it some questions, like what are the three most important points this email should communicate? So I'm not necessarily editing the content right now. I'm just reasoning back and forth with Copilot about this content. And I sometimes like the suggestions that Copilot makes. So it's like, yeah, let's make it more assertive with a timeline. So we'll go ahead and have it work on that a sec. All right, so it's updated now with a little more assertive tone and a clear timeline. Let me know if you want to make a more specific date, so I can replace that. So give you an idea. It's again not meant to be magic and a full edit, but it's a starting point, a place for you to kind of get going if you're having a rough time starting, like a email response or a proposal doc. Copilot does a great job of that, and then being able to interact and work with it is pretty powerful, right? But it's so far we've really looked at things that are where work is coming in, some communications going out, but I want to look next at where a lot of this work actually gets created, and that's in meetings. So I'm going to go ahead and just close out of the Outlook here for a sec, and we're going to go back over to Teams, and I'm going to go to a meeting. This is a meeting that has occurred, and again, as I said earlier, this is just demonstration purposes. I have my team help me actually make a meeting here with Mark and myself and actually another fictitious coworker here, Beth. And so there was a meeting about the Harborview project update that I can pull up. And some of this stuff is pretty typical. You've probably seen this if you're using Teams and getting some summaries. I can actually play the recording. That's all kind of normal stuff. I won't play this yet for you. But I want to point out are a couple things that the licensed version of Copilot really enhances inside of Teams. And this stuff gets really, really impactful. One of the ones I really like is this video recap. So I'm going to click on this. And hopefully
the meeting opened with the candidates.
Pause it a quick second. Hopefully you will be able to hear this. I'm going to speed up the playback a little bit. So we'll just play a little bit of this to give you guys a sense of what that meeting was like. And then this is just, this is a video recap that Copilot has created from that content. So we'll go ahead and play that a sec.
Assessment of the Harborview project status. Stephen pressed for clarity, prompting Mark to confirm that while the September 14th target is technically possible, the project facial exposure. Next, the team examined the main risks threatening the timeline. Mark outlined unresolved permit clearance, fixture schedule instability, and the need to consider acceleration. Beth emphasized that lacking clear ownership for these dependencies could lead to further delays. Continuing, the discussion shifted to fixture sequencing and its impact on downstream planning. Mark and Beth highlighted how optimistic dates can undermine operational readiness, stressing the importance of realistic scheduling. Building on that, the group explored options for accelerating the schedule. Mark described possible measures like evening and weekend work, whilst assuming acceleration is a simple fix, noting the financial and process implications. Subsequently, Stephen asked Mark to clarify what is possible, plausible, and realistic for the project dates. The team agreed on 3 scenarios, recognizing the value of planning around realistic timelines rather than optimistic targets. Let's hear Mark lay out the 3 project scenarios.
September 14th is still possible if the permit clears, tweak, and the fixture sequencing stabilizes quickly. September 18th is plausible if we compress and the permit issue doesn't drag. September 28th is realistic if the permit slips and we decide not to accelerate aggressively.
Finally, the conversation focused on decision ownership and next step. The group assigned coordination and operational follow-up roles, identified unresolved items, and committed to providing written scenarios and clarifying ownership. This brought the session to a close. Those were the highlights. For more details, ask Copilot.
All right, so that kind of give you an idea of what the meeting was like, what some of the main ideas, some of the content, some of the topics, some of the discussion points without having to go back and play the entire recording, which is great when you're looking at the transcript. But that recap is really great. I use this a lot to just review meetings that maybe happened a while back, and my memory isn't quite clear on exactly what had happened there, and I find that really helpful. But what you'll notice about this particular meeting, it wasn't really abnormal. I wouldn't call it a broken meeting, but you kind of hear some of the friction. There were some unresolved items and some unclear ownership, and there was some disagreement about what's acceptable. So, someone now has to really kind of take this meeting and turn it into something usable, right? And that's where Copilot now inside of this meeting is really great. What I can do now is work with Copilot just around the content of this meeting. And so I'm going to put a prompt in here. Let me grab that. Let me start a new chat. So I'm chatting now with Copilot about this meeting that occurred. So I'm going to ask Copilot, summarize this meeting in 5 bullet points. Cover the main topics, decisions, and unresolved questions. All right, and so what you'll see here is you'll start to see some structures appearing. Right, this isn't just summary, but it's starting to organize things. You can continue. I'm going to go a little deeper here with Copilot. Let's have a more conversation prompts. So let's say, what decisions were made. And again, this can be really helpful. Maybe it was someone who didn't attend the meeting, and so you're coming in and you want to kind of know what was really going on, what decisions were there. And again, it's showing me there they adopted the 3 scenario planning framework, some ownership. Mark owned coordination. Some future recommendations were made. A written scenario summary will be produced by Mark. So we committed to preparing a written summary. Some items that were left unresolved, and here's maybe a key takeaway from the meeting. And I like that when you start talking about action items in a meeting. I'm always really interested in that. So let's ask Copilot to list the action items with the owners from this particular meeting. This might be a little hard to read just because of my screen setup here. I will kind of move this over to the right so you can see, but it shows us some action items. Like this first one here, prepare a written summary of the 3 schedule scenarios and clean up the assumptions. So the owner of this was Mark. And if I scroll to the right here, you can see, what's the status of that. It's been assigned. Mark committed to delivering it by the following afternoon during the meeting, and some other items that were listed. Then there are some here that didn't have a confirmed owner. And then some ownership summary at a glance. I can see what Mark is committed to, what Beth has, and what I had. How about, here's another one. Let's ask Copilot for some a little more analysis of this meeting. So, where do we disagree on this topic? So it revealed alignment on the facts, but several areas of disagreement, tension, or differing perspectives about what to do with those facts. All right, so here's some areas that there was some disagreement, and some areas of broad agreement. So it's, you see, I'm getting a much deeper, analysis and reasoning about this meeting, well beyond just a standard summary. Let's do another couple. How about what unresolved risk or questions remain? All right, so as you can see, Copilot does a great job. This is an area I find it's really valuable on being able to help interpret meetings, maybe go back and clarify if there was maybe some confusion. Oftentimes when I'm in a meeting, maybe you're focused on maybe taking notes or certain things that are not always getting the full picture of maybe the real content, what were everybody's viewpoints, and that this really helps me when I'm doing this with Copilot, to be able to go back and analyze, and especially meetings that maybe my memory is faded, so I don't have to rely on just maybe the physical notes I took or my memory. Copilot is really really good at that. And then let me, this last part of the demo here, let's go look at some of these files. So another area, so obviously the meetings and some of my communications about this project were really helpful, but oftentimes a lot of this, the rich content will sit in some of these documents. So I've got a document here. Instead of me having to read the whole document, I'm just going to ask Copilot here to just maybe summarize this for me quick before I deep dive into it. All right. So again, it's giving me just a high-level overview, summarizing these different scenarios, different dates, and some open questions and key takeaways. So helping me understand that what's in that document without even having to open it. But another thing I find really powerful is being able to compare multiple documents. Right, so let's do this. I know I've got these two, the summary document and then this operational impact note document. I'm going to ask Copilot, and what I want you to kind of see here as well is I'm really limiting right now what I'm having Copilot reason against. When I first started the demo, I was really asking Copilot some broad questions about things across my entire workspace, all of my emails, files, meeting notes, chat conversations. But now I'm really limiting it. I'm saying, hey, Copilot, just focus on these two documents. I want you to compare these. Tell me where the main tensions or trade-offs are. Okay. So now it's being able to, ask for a comparison of these, specifically focusing on the main tensions or trade-offs. So it's showing me some of the key scenarios and dates from the scenario summary, and then the operational impact note doc. Some of the main tensions are some schedule compression versus operational readiness, and then even a summary table here, and then and a pretty nice conclusion. So that's a part of a Copilot feature that I really think is unique, being able to reason and compare across multiple files. All right, let me back out here of our demo spec and get back to the right screen sharing. So hang with me here for just a second. Let me get back to our slide deck. Here we go. All right, I think we got that back there. 1 second, tee this back up. Yeah, I mean, so when you're looking at that demo, what actually changed in these examples, maybe compared to what it would be like without a tool like Copilot? This isn't magic, not automation for the sake of automation. What changed is that less time was spent searching and rewriting and piecing things together manually. And that creates more time for the things that actually matter. Like deciding and responding and moving work forward. That's the practical payoff. And this is where I think Copilot is most useful today. It's like, catching up, knowing what to say and making sense of meetings and working across files. It's not everywhere, not on everything, but in the right moments. The moments where you already have work in motion and you need some help reducing friction around it. That's where it starts to feel practical instead of theoretical. So in our next session, we're going to build on this foundation, and we're going to move into newer capabilities. And that's going to include things like agents, more advanced workflows, some deeper reasoning across systems, and where Copilot is going next. But that conversation, it makes a lot more sense after today, because today gives us the practical baseline. So if you're thinking about what to do next, I'd keep it simple. Watch the earlier sessions if you haven't already. Try this in your environment and start small, but stay steady. That's usually how this works the best. Not a huge rollout energy, but just small practical use cases that build confidence over time. And if you want to join us for the next session, the date and the link are right there. And with that, let's open it up. What questions do you have? What are you seeing in your environment? And where are you still trying to figure out whether Copilot is actually useful? So if you have some questions, go ahead and open up your chat and put those in there, and we can kind of take a look at those and see if we can't answer those for you. Great. Here's a question. How is Copilot different than ChatGPT? Guess maybe I'd focus on a couple areas that are significant when you're comparing a tool like ChatGPT and Copilot. The first big one is that Copilot exists inside your Microsoft 365 environment. We have the demo that we were showing, our meetings and files and emails, chats, all of that content inside of your Microsoft 365 tenant. Copilot exists there, and it can reason across that directly. So I don't have to feed Copilot individual files and individual content to reason over, to ask questions about, to have a conversation with Copilot about that content. It has access to that. And so, you can see the one example at the end there I showed you. I was limiting Copilot to specific files, but if I'm in Copilot chat asking broad questions, I can ask it about anything that I have access to and that I have permissions to inside my Microsoft 365 tenant, whereas a tool like ChatGPT doesn't have that directly. You would have to be uploading content, giving it files, or copying and pasting. So there's some inefficiencies obviously there, but maybe even the second part of what I would say is the big difference is that a Copilot is honoring your existing permissions. So everything inside of your tenant is staying there, is all those security policies, permission structure, that's all going to be honored by Copilot, and it's not going to give, or the information that you interact with Copilot is not going to leave that tenant, whereas maybe a tool like ChatGPT or others, once you upload or copy and paste content, you're moving that content outside of your environment. So those are kind of two big differences between Copilot and ChatGPT. Just other note, Copilot is much more than just maybe a chat tool. As hopefully you've seen, there is a lot more capability there. So it's more kind of like, almost, I wouldn't call it a wrapper, but it's really an interface to allow you to do a lot of different things with different AI tools, whereas some of these others are a little more limited in what they are doing in their functionality. And then you can actually use other AI tools and engines inside of Copilot, but we'll be getting into that more in like session 4. All right, anybody else have? Here's another one. Why does Copilot give me a wrong answer? And this is a question that isn't necessarily unique to Copilot. I would say any AI tool that you're using, you need to be careful about this. Any AI tool could potentially give you a wrong answer, or what often is called hallucinations, or often what I would circle that back to more is, it's not often the tool giving wrong information. It's maybe the prompting, the guidance, the context that you as a user are giving to a tool like Copilot in your conversation. That the instructions that you're giving may not be clear, but as any AI tool, it does need verification. All right, so you can't just assume and trust that any output from an artificial intelligence product is going to be foolproof. It needs to be validated, needs to have human verification and checking. And so a tool like Copilot does a very good job of giving references for you to be able to confirm where did you get that answer from. But and that's it's, as you're using a tool like Copilot, you need to be conscious or thinking through how you're going about what are you asking it to do. Are you kind of working, maybe if you have content, things that are already started, maybe you have things in progress, and you're working with Copilot to refine and adjust and tweak and critique, improve. That does a fantastic job of that. If you're asking an AI tool, just, hey, I'm going to push the easy button, like, hey, just create a document for me that does all of this, or go out and do it and get back to me when you're done without any guidance, without context. That's where I think you're probably not doing it you're not using the tool probably in its proper way. And that's where if you're not giving it clear instructions and guidance, it's going to look for an answer. I mean, these tools want to provide you with a response. And so you need to be making sure you're giving it the context and instructions correctly. So I don't know if that answers that question quite right, but oftentimes it's more on kind of what the guidance was given, what instructions were giving it. Okay, I'm going to give it a few more minutes here for any other questions. Okay, here's another one. So are there certain tasks that we shouldn't be using AI with? Yeah, I mean, it can be a chance, kind of a tough question, right? And it might vary from organization to organization. But maybe I would rephrase it as, are there areas that you maybe should not maybe be focusing first on an AI tool? Like, if you're starting, you're just getting going with something like a Copilot, maybe putting a task that's external facing, customer facing as your first use, and certainly wouldn't want to be producing content that I'm going to maybe put out in the public and present it as my content or my company's content without true verification and a real clear thought about how you're designing or developing that content. That would be something I wouldn't give a Copilot or any AI tool, just carte blanche, like go out and create this content for me that I'm going to put out in the public sphere, versus me working on content, maybe making drafts and then working with an AI tool like Copilot to enhance and tweak. I think those are areas if you've got sensitive information. There may be areas that you've got contractual obligations, I mean, with a customer, or maybe you've got industry regulations that are prohibiting that information from being shared with AI tools. Then those are certainly areas that you wouldn't want to be doing, and that's part of our guardrail sections, our first session 2. And well, even session 1 in this Copilot series, we talked a lot about that, of identifying there are some areas in your organization that should be off the limits to AI, certainly in the early stages. So those are things that you would maybe want to say, confidential information, sensitive information we may not want there, even though Microsoft has some very robust and very solid AI use policies and what they allow to or how they work with the tools. The information that you give it is really solid, but you may have some things there that you just decide, no, we don't want that to even be ever reasoned with across AI. Yeah. All right, folks. I know we're kind of getting up near the end of our typical time here, so I will maybe wrap that up there. It looks like maybe the questions have slowed down. So let me circle back here. Another slide here maybe to pull up on how we can maybe continue this. If you want to keep this conversation going, there's a few easy ways to do that. As I said, session 4 is coming up next. You can watch the previous sessions on demand at any time. We'll also follow up with some resources so that you don't have to remember everything from today all in one shot. And if this was useful, I encourage you to keep going. Don't stop at the idea stage. And hopefully we'll look forward to seeing you guys all on session 4. Appreciate you joining today and taking some time out. Go out and make it a great rest of your day.